Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here, and I just want to get a couple of resolutions passed so that we can, it's a resolution to receive the submissions and to receive the report from staff. So if we could have someone to move that the council receive the not heard and late submissions to the draft annual plan and the report of the draft annual plan, submissions, analysis and managers' comments. 29 Tim, seconded Glenn. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. So that's done. And we'll just move on to the first submission, who is submitted from yesterday, Mr. Benson, and that should be loaded up to your hub separately. Have you all got that? He hasn't managed to load to mine, so I'll open it up from yesterday.
And there's this as well.
And could I invite you, Mr. Benson, to come forward, and thank you very much for facilitating our arrangements yesterday afternoon. That was very helpful. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Before I start on the submission, I'd like to start on Enable, which I believe that you partially own or fully own. I want to get Wi-Fi up my driveway, which is co-owned. The neighbour is objecting. Enable told me back in June, 3 months, then the legislation will have power and we can act. Now, I rang them up the other day and they've now got another bag load of excuses. So I suggest that if you guys own them, light a rocket under them to get on with the job. Because it's costing them money and it's costing me money.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, I hear some of the same problem here.
Yeah.
It would be helpful to know what the reason they've given you now.
Not the
legislation.
We can follow it up for you. It's no problem.
They were supposed to have legislation.
This is a submission that we're hearing on the annual plan.
Yep.
Thank you for raising it, but we'll get staff to get your details off you afterwards and we'll follow it up for you.
Okay. Well, I want to start off on water rates, land drainage rates and sewage rates. And I believe this most strongly, it should be on usage for water, and on the other two on a uniform annual charge. I get the feeling that you are using capital value, that you're thinking of the higher valued properties have got the ability to pay more. This could be a very interesting court case. I've actually challenged the council once before on levels of user pay or selective paying, and it didn't get as far as being voted on. The staff withdrew it. But I'd be quite happy to put in some money to go on this. And I'm thinking that it's just as well that you're only doing it on water rates, and that supermarkets and clothing shops don't look at what your property value is and charge you on your capital value, because you can pay more for your clothes and shoes and footwear and groceries. And one of the things is, I think it was Abe Lincoln said, you don't tax the rich to give to the poor, because you drag the rich down to the poor level. Council debt servicing, I see your performance benchmark is getting pretty close to your stated level, and it will increase if your costs rise. One thing in your annual plan I looked at was annual sales, or asset sales of 5 million, but you don't specify actually what you're trying to sell or going to sell, which would be interesting to know. I know this is past history, but you gave money to the Anglican Cathedral. And that annoys me rather immensely, because what you're basically doing, you are rewarding the ones who are underinsured, and it was, from what I'm told, it was deliberately underinsured. Now, as if any of you are trustees of family properties, you will know if you make a mistake and screw up, the beneficiaries can sue you. And under the CPT Act, the trustees are not held liable for screw-ups. Roads and footpaths. I made the comment here, if the floors of this council building, or all your council buildings, were in the same state of repair as the roads and footpaths, and you expect your staff to use them, your staff would walk out, because it's a gross safety and health issue. I've had a fall on the road. where there's a step down, wasn't marked. Something distracted me for a split second. I gave the Pendleton office the medical bill and photographs of the thing, and I got paid within days, $95. And I hope other people do it too. There's some small holes, there's cheap patchwork being done. There were small holes in Jackson Road. One was patched, and probably within the length of this table, there was one either side. They didn't even look. One's got grass growing through it. Didn't even look, they just walked on. You know, be proactive. 5 minutes, done. And you all know what happens when the water gets under seal, the seal breaks up. The use of bricks and stones to stop parking on verges has to be stopped. Clifford Avenue is a good example of this. You get cars parked opposite each other, and you've got stones and bricks. You actually effectively bring the road down to a one-way road. And this is happening quite often. Garden Road is also another example of this. The road surface in Clifford Avenue is absolutely appalling, and so is the footpath. I was venting my opinion somewhere one day, and the shocking silver guy was standing there, and he says, I agree with you, but he said, I love it. He says, but it's more business for me. And he's replacing shocking silvers in vehicles every 12 months. So, you know, something has to be done. Photograph 3 in those photographs you got shows in Daresbury Avenue. Now that tree root is probably 60 to 70 millimetres above the tar seal. And if you're walking there in the dark and have a trip, you're going to get a lot of gravel rash. Council vehicles. Only staff who are on call should take vehicles home. I noticed a couple of years ago there was one vehicle parked just past the Richmond shopping mall on the side of the road for 2 weeks. And we had a neighbour in Amberley who was a temporary building inspector. His your work car was parked at his place for 2 weeks while he was on holiday. It was a sheer and utter waste of money and a vehicle. It also, if you cut down the vehicles going home at night, you cut down the fringe benefit tax, which is what we the ratepayers pay. And I think the building inspectors have to go down to small vehicles. They don't carry a lot of stuff with them, except, say, the Banks Peninsula where they're travelling on a lot of rougher roads. Council own new buildings and both finished and proposed. The council should be open to the ratepayers and tell them what each of these buildings, the annual cost will be. And I've listed here the new town hall. I see already there's repair work having to be done on that, and reading the article closely in just a few minutes ago, that the tape put down for cables is when it's being pulled up is tearing up the surfacing on the floor. The convention centre, that's going to be a cost. The city centre library, well, we all know what the touch screen costs, and the modification of that, upkeep of that is going to be horrendous. The event centre and the stadium. I raise these ideas because there's a lot of ratepayers struggling, and as you've seen in the paper last week, overdue Christchurch rates top 3 million. That is going to explode. There is no stadium in the world makes money. None. They're all a cost to the ratepayers. One of the things I've seen already that VBase was looking for more money for now that the town hall is in operation for running your properties. Lime scooters, get rid of them. They're a danger to pedestrians. They're a danger to road users. Now, I wear hearing aids, which are fairly powerful. I don't hear them till they're right alongside me. And I was having a grizzle the other day about this, and a guy who's got extremely good hearing, he said, the same with him. You don't hear them till they're right alongside you. They are dangerous and they're a menace. And we've all read the story about a guy either towing a baggage trolley out to the airport or towing one back on the road. Just straight out idiotic. And the other day, there was a guy, a student, weaving across Jackson's Road, like that. And as I turned to my driveway, I gave him a toot toward him, and he just about fell off, but he carried on, weaving down the road. They're irresponsible. No crash helmets, no nothing. In fact, one of the things is that with electric cars, and other ones you don't hear, is they pay no road tax, And perhaps local government, through their annual meeting coming up very shortly, should lobby government to actually have a tax like they have on diesel vehicles, for road tax for electric vehicles. And also, I make a comment too, that new cycles, and they're always demanding new cycleways, and they pay nothing. It's the petrol users and the government who pay, and the diesel users. Put a tax on new cycles being sold. All right, just going back to stadiums and sports events. Many years ago, Hamilton City Council had V8 car racing in there. When the CEO left, it was the ex-mayor, they found that $30 million had been hidden under the bloody mat. And that was actually appalling. And as a ratepayer at the time in the Waikato and Hamilton City, we were really penalised on that stupidity. You've got a proposal, you're going to defer maintenance on your housing stock. This is totally and utterly wrong. I've been in the farming business and property business for a good long time. And more recently, I'm out of farming, I'm out of commercial properties, and I've gone back to buying domestics. I love houses that have been poorly maintained, poorly upgraded, because I buy them, do them up and sell them, and I make a profit each year. I like that. If you get behind in your property maintenance, you are always going to be in catch-up mode. Always. You'll never get ahead of it again. Photo 4 shows a dog dump. Now, you folks in your wisdom a couple of years ago, in your dog policy, said that dogs that are under control could be off their leads on the road. Now, I've been a sheep farmer most of my life, and to my way of thinking, there's only 2 dogs that are totally under control. 2. One is on a vet's table under anaesthetic, and the other one's dead. Now, I've got a terrier. They are obedient when it suits them. And if a farm dog, if it's not working, gets up to mischief. While they're working, they're under control, they are obedient. And there's dogs in town, they run behind the people, they have a dump, the people just walk on, they don't see it, and they don't want to. There's dog crap everywhere all over town, even the best suburbs of Fendleton and Maryvale. I think the council should get out and go for a walk and have a look and see what's around. I see that the Fendleton Community Centre used to have my PO box number. I've had it for 4 years. I'm still getting their mail. It's about time the Fendleton Community Centre, because you can't get hold of anyone, pull their fingers out and change their addresses to all their suppliers. Last thing I want to say is I think there should be some training for councillors. I think there should be training on how to return phone calls. There should be training on who negotiates contracts, and to me that is staff only, not councillors.
Absolutely.
And the third one is if something goes against you, don't whinge and wail in council when the press is here. Do it out in the back room where the press don't hear and report it. Thank you.
Well, can I just say, I absolutely agree with that. Thank you very much for your submission. You've got to your 10 minutes, so look, thank you very, very much. It's much appreciated. And we'll respond to the issues that you've raised. Thank you.
Thank you.
Empower Christchurch.
Oh, there was one other small item. The Hagley Community College is looking for money for a hall. They want a slice of the cake. I don't think much of the cake will be left by the time they get to it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. thank you. Welcome.
Welcome.
Kia ora koutou, good afternoon, Mayor and Councillors.
This is a submission on behalf of Empowered Christchurch. My name is Jan Burney and this is Dr. Jacqueline Tither. Our submission is in 3 parts. Hazards, consequences, questions. Actual hazards versus documented hazards. The damage caused by the Canterbury earthquake sequence has been thoroughly documented. However, much of the information did not find its way to the hazard and risk assessment as required under the National CDEM plan or into the horizontal infrastructure component of the cost-sharing agreement between the Council and the Crown. Once again, this annual plan, the 5th since the earthquakes, makes no allowance for mitigation of hazards introduced by the earthquakes. Tonkin and Taylor Coastal Hazard Report 2015 identified approximately 6,000 homes that were subject to erosion within the next 50 years, now the next 46 years. The NZS ISO 31000-2009 is the risk management standard the Council supposedly works to. However, with the assistance of a lobby group, CCRU, the Council has repeatedly deferred application of this standard to the coastal hazard management, in particular for the erosion and flooding hazards, and has ignored thousands of homes that suffered tectonic subsidence and now face substantially increased flood risk.
The failure to apply the above standard means that the threat to life has been ignored. The activities of the above lobby group, CCRU, have magnified the loss of life risk rather than reducing it to the level required under the ISO standard, i.e. a 1 in 10,000 chance of being killed. Erosion was removed from the Resource Management Act in 2015 and application of the RMA was disabled in the worst affected areas of the city where it is most needed. 9 years after the first earthquake, many thousands of homes have not had the protection of legislation such as the RMA. The New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement 2010 has still not been complied with. Likewise, the policies of the Civil Defence Act 2002 have not been achieved. Data and information on these hazards were excluded from key reports and, most importantly, were not accurately communicated to Civil Defence or to the Ministry for the Environment. As a result, the latest 2019 Environment Report from the Ministry for the Environment shows no erosion risk in the coastal areas in Christchurch.
The consequences. Is this the legacy the present Council wish to leave for the city? Immediate erosion risk affecting an estimated 6,000 properties and medium-term flood risks in large parts of the city. Erosion is an imminent risk for homes and needs to be addressed urgently. The affected properties correspond approximately to the area of the new residential unit overlay. Significant future liability for Christchurch City due to emissions and failure to act against coastal hazards with the threat of a disaster similar to those seen in Edgecombe and Matata on the North Island.
Questions. When will the ISO 31000-2009 risk management standard finally be followed? Where is the annual plan budget for those affected by earthquake damage, in particular erosion? This risk is not insurable. After 9 years of delay, where is the budget for mitigating earthquake-induced coastal hazards? What is Council's solution and annual plan budget for homes that have been left uninsured or uninsurable on erosion-prone land? Thank you for listening to us. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Questions? Aaron?
Actually, I won't ask it publicly.
Glenn?
Thank you. Just having a quick look at that risk standard. What is, maybe you feel like you've just said it, but if you haven't, could you delve a bit deeper on your understanding of the application of that standard to local government and what was that? And territorial authorities.
Okay,
Please.
Hugo?
Yeah, this has been identified as one of the failures of the current approach in a document from Tonkin and Taylor, which is published by Ministry for the Environment, the failure of addressing the risk of fatality, individual risk of fatality. This is a part of this particular risk standard, and by, this is, we've had a very consequential disaster, deadly disaster in Christchurch. This should be a priority to address the risk to life. Instead of that being a priority, that goes into discussion with a lobby group, and it's delayed and has been delayed now for many, many, many years. The fatalities that people that Christchurch is dealing with have been written about in the press. People are just dropping dead of stress. We got breadwinners. We got families which have lost their breadwinners. This has to be addressed one way or the other. It's not acceptable not to address the risk to life after a disaster like the earthquakes. Totally unacceptable, and I hope that you agree with that.
The adaptation strategy is basically an absence of planning, and it is the planning for a long term rather than the short term. We have short term risks. We have short term, some people, the worst affected from the earthquakes, have had all the loss, liability passed to them.
Maybe just quickly, because you can't. So your application of risk is quite wide. So you're throwing it quite wide, Hugo and Jan. That's just what I've heard. So it may not be some direct causal thing, but you're saying, for people's well-being, etc.
It's on a community level and on an individual level and a city-wide level. There are some sectors of this community, this city, that have been left out of a recovery. They have been left the loss, liability and risk, not just in the short term but in the long term as well, with regards to insurability, loss of values, and even maybe have to remove themselves from their homes because there is no mitigation. There is no planning. There is no plan for those worst at risk, the most vulnerable. The outcome in the city currently is not equitable. And adaptation, going long term, is not equitable. When you have some who, for example, the CCRU are lobbying for a coastal wall or mitigation, when in fact their area rose. It's not equitable. We need an equitable outcome for everybody, and solutions, even with adaptation, has to be equitable.
Agree with that. Sarah, then Aaron.
Thanks so much for that. There's two key things that have been raised several times during the hearings, and there's the earthquake legacy issues and the future adaptation for sea level rise, climate change, and the consequences of that. We've been told by one submitter that the community isn't ready for the adaptation discussion even yet until the earthquake stuff's been fixed. Do you believe that's the case, or do you believe that we should be doing both at the same time and getting on with it?
There is a degree for both at the same time. I wholeheartedly agree with adaptation and looking at the future.
Yeah.
That's a must. It's obvious it's a must.
Great.
But there is some issues now.
Absolutely.
And some of the risk is too high for some people. Some of the loss is too high for some people. Some people advocating for themselves now are not the worst affected. The worst affected have no voice.
That's great. Thank
They
you.
have not been looked after by this council nor by the local government, central government.
Yeah. I think I told you the other day that there is a paper coming to council next week, which I'm not sure has it already gone online. Yeah, have a look, because it might be worthwhile to come and make a deputation to that, because we will be considering separating the South Shore and South Brighton issues. Raf, did you have a quick question?
Well, a very quick question. I mean, we've heard a lot about this over the last few years. You've come in regularly. What I'm struggling to quite understand is what solution right now would you like the council to provide for you?
The council, I think, has an obligation to lobby very, very, very hard to the central government for funding now and in the medium term for added mitigation of risk,
But what is
of stop banks, drainage, flooding.
Because I think it'd be really helpful if you came with some specific requirements, and then we could work out what the budget is. At the moment, we keep hearing this, and it's quite confusing because we've got the stuff.
Unfortunately,
there's not a lot of clarity around what you're asking for.
Unfortunately, with a lot of what I have been doing with the ECAN Global the global stormwater consent, working party with the Christchurch City Council councillors, we have no the lowest and the worst rung and most vulnerable are not put in a priority. Therefore, if you can't get a priority, you have no voice. You are not given a priority, Ralph.
Okay, well, we've come to the end of the 10 minutes. Aaron, I did miss you before, so have you got a quick question? Or?
It is. It's a bit of a clanger though, because I live on the other side of town, but I feel your frustration because I keep hearing this every year about fixing the seawall and the area flooding at South Shore.
Well, no, it's
not just as we're not South Shore.
They're not
we are
South Shore.
CCRU is South Shore, and they want the seawall.
I did say
Yeah, some of us have no plans. There is no strategy. There is no plan. There is no attempt to fix the earthquake damage or rivers. The three waters, all of the river, all the water from stormwater, drainage, flood, surface comes to our three waters, the Heathcote, the Styx, the Avon.
Yeah.
We're seeing more and more development coming, more and more. Nothing has been done. Why is there no priority towards the upgrading infrastructure?
Well, look, we did pull the coastal hazards chapter out of the district plan review. That will be coming back. So we will be having those discussions in the next, it'll take quite a while, but we'll be moving that.
Unfortunately, the insurance companies are...
and the report is up, so it's online for next week. It does, and we'll let Joe know that you want to make a deputation to the council meeting, because I think that would be very helpful. Yep. Also give you time to have a look at the matters that we'll be discussing next week.
The insurance companies are withdrawing from those most vulnerable, and you have done nothing.
I have arranged to meet with the Insurance Council as a result of the discussion that I had with you a couple of weeks ago. So I've made contact with the Insurance Council to discuss that very issue as I undertook that I would. So I haven't got a date for the meeting, but we have made the direct approach, and he has agreed to come down and meet with the whole council.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time.
Much appreciated. Could I have BB Frail for the Riverside Community Network? Kia ora and welcome.
Kia ora. Do I continue even though there's a... Okay, we'll try and keep this brief. So we are here, Louise and I are here representing the Riverside Community Network. We were formerly a collection, kind of a loose collection of RAs and community groups in Burwood, Avondale and Dallington, and we've kind of more formalised this loose connection into our network. Our primary focus is to see the provision of a community facility in our area. So this has come out of a 2017 needs analysis that was completed that identified the lack of a community hub in our area. This was identified pre-earthquakes as being a gap, and post-earthquakes more of a gap, as some of our key community facilities have been taken from us. So we've now completed as a group a feasibility study and a high-level business case for a community facility, and it has concluded, it's in draft at the moment, that there is an active, supportive and capable group of residents associations and community groups in the area, that the best approach for this community facility is a trust governance approach formed by these groups, that the approach that we want to take is aligned with the community facility network plan that the council is undertaking. I don't know where that's up to, but that the report identifies a suitable location for us, and that there is a possible existing building with the right configuration of spaces that we're looking at. It's adjacent to a local church with lots of community activity already taking place, but limited space to grow and accommodate other community activity. The local church is happy to partner with a future trust, but the partnership arrangement means that the trust is then not reliant on the church for its continued success. So we can operate independently of the church, but the church can be a part of our trust, and we can work together on our facility. It would be a campus-style development supporting a range of community activities, and these activities are currently taking place in a variety of places around our groups. So the Dallington Community Trust, the Wainoni Avonside Community Services Trust, that's Betty Chapman if you know her, All Saints Church, Build Christian Centre, New Brighton Men's Shed that's just about to move over to All Saints Church, and Otakaro Park Scout Group, which is sitting very close to the red zone all by itself at the moment in Dallington. So we're just here to remind you that this work is underway, and that once we sign off our feasibility study and business case, we'll be looking for sources of funding to get this work started. We note that there's very little funding for our area in the draft annual plan, and we accept why this is. It's a trade-off between rates rises and, you know, giving every community agency that comes to you money. But we're just letting you know that we'll be back to talk to you when we've finished our feasibility work with a more detailed view of what we need from council.
Excellent, thank you. So, questions? Jimmy Chen.
I ask you one question, okay? Yeah, thank you. So this one, the new community center for the Burwood, Avondale, and Darlington, whether it's replaced original shut down, closed the Burwood Community Center or not?
So
is this one?
the existing Burwood Community Centre?
Yes.
I think you're referring
No.
to the school hall, aren't you? That was knocked down.
Oh yeah, there was a school,
Yeah, there
and
was a
that site is
school
now
hall.
empty. So
Yeah,
it's been considered by our group as a potential site on the corner of Lake Terrace Road and New Brighton Road,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then
that's right.
beside that is All Saints Church,
Uh-huh.
which is also a consideration for. They have land available, and we're having a conversation with them about that. And then there's another building next to that which is vacant, and a heritage building which is also for consideration.
Okay, thank you.
Dion.
Sorry, weird. Sorry, you put me off. Saturday. Is this bad or is this a dab? Is it dab?
Yeah,
or is
yeah. It used to be bad, but some of our older members didn't like us being called the Badass, so we've renamed ourselves to the Riverside Community Network. So it's a bit more professional sounding.
No, why can't you just do a dab? You know.
Yeah,
be hip.
yeah.
No, sorry. No, serious question. How much in a ballpark kind of thing are we talking about here? Is it
Probably $2.5 million.
So is that capital or OPEX?
That's capital, and the OPEX, we've got a business case at the moment that shows us covering the OPEX ourselves.
Okay,
So running the model is that the governance model is that we run our own community centre, but we're looking for a range of funding sources for our CapEx.
And so the CapEx bit will be you said there's an existing building, so that's a refit cost.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, purchasing the building.
Oh, it's actually purchasing the building. Okay.
And then, and it's an earthquake damaged building.
Yep.
So looking at the cost
The
to repair.
strengthening. Okay, cool.
Yep.
Thank you.
Very good. Anyone else? Phil?
Thanks, Bebe. And I'm just wondering that it's clearly a sizable project. whereas, and there's been sounds like there's been a long-standing need for this. But I guess other communities would have smaller kind of like meeting places or hubs. So I'm just wondering, why is your group looking at such a, pretty stand out there type project as compared with a smaller one?
I think we identified that in working our way through how we were going to arrange this, each of our communities wanted their own space, but each of our communities is halved by the red zoning. And so we are now quite small communities. So Darlington is a very small community. And we understood that there may not be a justification for a community centre for our area at quite a great cost for a couple of thousand people. So we kind of thought, draw together into a bigger grouping. And we're still not that big a grouping, even all joined together.
Thanks for explaining that.
What is that total when you add up the residents of all three?
I think we're about a couple of thousand each. So maybe 6,000 or 7,000 residents in the... It depends on how you define us.
Burwood's
Burwood is quite large. I don't have the numbers for Burwood, for Darlington.
If I may...
Thank you, Glenn.
It's the Burwood East.
It's Burwood East.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more obviously from Bassett, Harnwell, eastward. So it takes in the new housing development and a little wee bit of what was left after the red zoning.
But we also support Horseshoe Lake, and there's a little bit in the middle that nobody has taken responsibility for that we'd want to gather into our hub also.
Yeah, Golf Links RA's gone on the back burner, and there isn't one for Horseshoe Lake as such. But
no, and Windsor also is in recess.
yeah.
Is that where we live?
Yeah. Yeah, that's our area, which is effectively Horseshoe Lake. I get the newsletter, I'm just in the boundary. But.
Yeah. Special delivery to Glenn.
No, look, thank you very much. I mean, I'm very aware of the area, obviously, but it's a little bit challenging.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what we wanted to say is just that we're not here for a handout. We're working hard for ourselves, but we will be coming and talking to you about budgets in the future.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Your community board was fully in support, by the way.
Yes, they are. They've endorsed our approach.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, Inner City East Linwood Revitalisation Working Group. Now, since one of the presenters is my sister-in-law, which I have to declare, I'm just wondering if I should just sit back and let Andrew chair the meeting.
You're just listening, aren't you?
Eh?
Just listening, really.
Yeah, I know. No?
You're not making decisions.
All right.
Not making decisions.
Okay. Well, can I introduce you all to Jane Higgins, who's my sister-in-law, and Jenny Smith, we know very well. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a PowerPoint presentation to accompany this, just to whip through our main points. Yes, I am Jane Higgins. I'm the facilitator of the Inner City East Linwood Revitalisation Working Group. With me is Jenny Smith from Te Whare Roimata, community development worker there. And we, I'm not sure if you have access, here it comes.
Yes, coming.
Now, do I control this from here?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. So if you go to the first or the next slide, we're a working group that's been going for about 12 months. We were formed after some extensive community conversations that have taken place over the last several years in the Inner City East Linwood area. We work in a very community-led, community-based way, and we've been working on a revitalisation plan for 12 months, and we produced at the end of last year a progress report about that plan to the community board. Next slide please. We are working in a long-term way. So last year, in anticipation of the working group being formed, Te Whare Roimata put forward a submission to the annual plan covering a number of points that we have since developed programs of work around, and they covered community space, the cycleway, at least the area of the cycleway in our neighbourhood, residential planning and design guidelines, and neighbourhood rubbish collection. So I'd just like to take you through those 4 points because our submission today follows up on each of those. The first one is, next slide, thanks, or in fact, the one after that, a community hub. So we are looking towards the development of a community hub in the Linwood Village area. We have very strong community support for this, and we've done quite a bit of work as a working group in working out the needs and the purposes that that hub would fulfil, the principles by which it would run. We have applied for some funding to run a feasibility study with a community-minded design person so that we can translate those principles and purposes into the material reality of an architect's brief or something similar to that. So what we're here today to talk to or to apply for is council support for the purchase of some land in the village area. There are a couple of sites which are possible. Oh, no, not yet, thanks. And for the inclusion of that hub in the council's community facilities network plan. So that's the first thing that we'd like to highlight. The second is around the cycleway. Thank you. As you'll see from those pictures, the cycleway is a bit of a problem, particularly around the Worcester Street, Fitzgerald Avenue part of it. Next slide, thanks. The concerns have been raised about the cycleway since before it was put in, and there are concerns around safety, around usability, around parking, around rubbish collection. The working group has been in talks with council staff about this, about the design of it, but we've come to the point where we realise that while we can't necessarily change the design of it, we would certainly like some support to talk to operational staff about the different very specific problems around safety and usability and parking and rubbish collection. So we're seeking support for a resolution around working with operational staff in relation to that. Next slide, thanks. The third area that we are talking about in our submission is around the possibility of a neighbourhood plan. Since the earthquakes, we've experienced a lot of issues around the design of housing, the design of the neighbourhood, particularly around, next slide, thanks, the loss of character and amenity, the big growth in Airbnb, which is kind of a death knell to a community in lots of ways because of the lack of permanent people there, the lack of community cohesion that leads to. We'd love some more green space, and we also have concerns from people around off-street parking in the way that housing is now designed. So we joined ICANN, and we fully support ICANN's aims. What we're seeking support for is the development of a neighbourhood plan. We appreciate that the district plan is sort of a big overview, but that's a very long-term change that we'd seek. So now we'd like to ask for a neighbourhood plan which would be more short-term, more specific around our particular neighbourhood. And third and finally, the issue of rubbish collection. You may be aware that the issue of inorganic rubbish collection has been an issue for quite some time in our neighbourhood. Next slide, thanks. It's an issue of ongoing concern. It's an issue which affects not just the appearance of the neighbourhood, but also people's feelings of belonging in the neighbourhood, their perception of safety in the neighbourhood. If the area looks neglected, people feel less safe. So we have developed a really successful pilot in the last 6 months working with the Te Whare Roimata Labour Group, who have gone round on a monthly basis collecting large-scale inorganic rubbish. Obviously this has ongoing associated costs with it, and we would like to request some assistance with those ongoing associated costs. And we've also noticed that one of the big items of rubbish tends to be mattresses. People just throw them out on the sidewalk, and we're aware that there are some pilots for recycling mattresses elsewhere in the country, and so we just invite the council to give some thought to looking at a local mattress recycling scheme. So those are our 4 areas. Finally, I'd like to thank the council for the support that we've had over the last year. We've had fantastic support from council staff. We've had great support from the community board and from the Community Resiliency Partnership Fund. So we're very grateful for all of those. As you can see, we're in a kind of ongoing program of work, and so we're very keen for that support to continue. Thank you very much. If you've got any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Anne? Yep, yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. It's great that you are doing such a terrific job at strengthening the community. Particularly in the whole safety issue in the community. What particular ways are you focusing on the whole issue of the conception of safety and use as the issue? Are there things like, I see you've got some things, how are they working? Is it working? Are you getting that stronger sense of safety in the community?
Do you want to?
It's been an ongoing issue for a long time, and a lot of it stems, as many know, post-quake and the fact that it's a vulnerable neighbourhood. So there have been efforts done, like the alcohol ban, but there's also been some community efforts that have been done through using the resilience funding to be able to look at, a bit like what you've got uptown, the street worker, looking in the neighbourhood to being able to provide that supportive presence in the street. Because there is a little bit of gang tension and it's particularly present at the moment. And I guess it's also working besides the neighbourhood constable, which at the moment we don't have. So that there are efforts, and then there are efforts to be able to begin a conversation with the locals around what they would like to see, and knowing what we're seeing that is evidence-based throughout the country that works in a fairly vulnerable neighbourhood.
Okay. So do you have a mechanism in which, if someone is feeling intimidated, for example, at a local shop, a process through which they might ring somebody, or are people aware of those sorts of things?
So we have a good sort program that operates, and we are looking to be able, so there's a person out on the street for a couple of 2 or 3 days a week. The Tiny Shops Village is known as a place to go to if you're in the street and you're feeling vulnerable. There are 1 or 2 shops that are also really important, but we want to be able to extend, I guess, recruiting some respected members of the neighbourhood that, you know, can be identified as this is what you can come to. So if you're going to the ATM, there's people who are available to go if there's a presence close to the ATM.
Okay, thank you.
Phil? Oh, sorry. Dion was first. So, but it's okay. There's plenty of time.
I'll ask mine.
So Phil and then Dion.
Thank you very much. And clearly, the inner city east part is probably the most deprived and challenging area in our city. So I'm really pleased that you have come and with the projects you have taken on. But I'm just wondering, with the community hub concept and developing a feasibility study, would there be some good examples, say, from overseas, whether it's Australia or Britain, that in fact where some, full-scale hands-on projects have actually been successful, that we could also draw on? You might better tell me that.
Yes, we have looked at a couple of those and are in the process of looking more deeply into those. There are some really good examples in the United States and in the UK of places where people can come to be involved in activities. And one of the things that we've talked about is that people shouldn't need a kind of particular invitation to come into a community hub. If there's activities going on, and we have this happening in the tiny shops at the moment, there are activities, there are workshops, there's the icicles and a range of other things that are going on, that if people feel that they can come to those places and engage in some activities, then that's where they make the community connection. And there are some really great examples. There's a very good example in the UK, and there's a very extensive handbook that's come out of the United States, which I can't just give you the reference for at the moment, but that we are starting to look at. So drawing on that expertise and drawing on what's already going on in a way in the tiny shops area, with that sort of welcoming, come along, just sit and watch or be involved or do something crafty or whatever. Just that sense of people being able to come to a place where they don't have to consume. That's also been a big thing, because you can go to the malls, but there's all the pressure to consume. We want a place where people can be citizens together, not having to be consumers together. So, yeah.
Dion.
You know, it's actually already been largely asked now, so thanks for the work that you're doing, and I'm really disappointed that you didn't bring that cup of tea.
I will.
No, it's all good. Actually, I do have one thing to ask, and it's around the facility that you're saying that we need. How do you think that would fit in with the existing facility that we have across the road, the art gallery area?
I think it's important that we acknowledge that that is an art space, a community art space that has an important role in the arts. We're talking about complementing that with the hub. We're also, and I think in part of the hub is the activities, but also maybe social enterprise, opportunities of a little cafe or other opportunities for people to be able to try out ideas in a supportive environment. So I don't see it as competing, see it as complementing each other.
Thank you. Cheers.
The hub would also draw together, since the earthquakes, a number of services have been fragmented around the neighbourhood, and the hub would be a place to draw those together and enable people to come to a place where it's all happening.
And just one last thing, on the Airbnb thing a few weeks ago, the council has approved to take a remit to the local government New Zealand on Airbnb and to look at that issue, and that will have a big impact on the issues that we're seeing within the inner city east especially.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time and for your presentation. Thank you. Michelle Clark for the Yaldhurst Rural Residents Association. Sorry, my heart sank when all this paper turned up. It's really good just to email them through, and because they can just be put on our screens.
Fair enough too.
So much easier to try and save trees.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough.
Thank
Apologies. We only got some
don't
information 5 p.m. last night.
Right.
So.
Thank you. Welcome.
I was going to say thank you, and I don't have an expectation for you to be going through all of that information for this. It's really just to give you some background, and I know that we don't have a lot of time as well, so I'll cut into it. I know I talk quite quickly, so apologies, but it's a lot for us to get through, so hopefully I cover it off okay. I am Michelle Clark. I'm speaking on behalf of Yara in the interest of the Yaldhurst Memorial Hall. The local Yaldhurst Community Hall is a living memorial that was a result of the community gifting land and raising funds as part of the pound for pound subsidy run grant by the government at the time. It's designed to commemorate and remember those who have given their lives for our community and for the life we've got today. The fundraising efforts from the local community at that point were massive. The hall itself was specified to be something vitally living, something from its very nature of its use and enjoyment would ever keep before us and the generations that follow us that freedom of life and personal expression for which our men and women fought and fell, the type of memorial which best embodies this ideal as a community centre, or as I've just heard before, a community hub might be the new terms, where the people can gather for social, educational, cultural and recreational purposes. Part of the condition of the subsidy was that the hall needed to be handed over to the local governing authority and that due provision was made to the satisfaction of the government for maintenance and the upkeep of the memorial and for its management and a permanent functioning community centre. It was clear that this was to be a lifetime memorial. If we jump to today, at the time of the earthquake, the hall had insurance payments coming out of its accounts as part of the operating expenses of the facility. After the earthquake, the council approached the community to ask for what was to be done with the hall with an intent to demolish it. We then explained that the hall was under the ownership of the council. This took a long time to get there, but we're there now and it's all agreed that that's where the ownership sits. The council has since given a recommendation of demolishment for the following reasons. Despite paying insurance, as we know, the council was underinsured on all of the buildings, and unfortunately no insurance has been allocated to the Yaldhurst community. The council was not aware of the ownership, so missed the building off any funding grants or any plans that were available at the time. A first analysis of the structural integrity gave the hall 6%, and the first repair costing sat at 1.5 million. We have since, at our own cost, which has been quite extensive, and time, we have gained independent advice with architects, fire engineers, and a QS who have been able to take a closer look. And I would say with greater knowledge now, after 9 years on, of the types of buildings it's established that the hall is now at a minimum of 45% of NBS. And so has spent 8 years not being used, cleaned or maintained unnecessarily. It is disappointing that we've had to spend so much money on a council-owned property to get there, but we do believe it's been for the right outcome. We've also gained new costings, at which sits the total maintenance work, which we'd like to point out is about strengthening and not repair, at between $540,000 and $600,000. This is $900,000 less than originally planned. And I'd also like to point out that a third of this actually includes simple works on accessibility and fire, for example, upgrades to accessibility and deferred maintenance such as painting, which would not be considered as a result of the earthquake. We have no great needs as a community to have a fancy new facility. All we're asking for is to get our building back to what it was. We've also been told there is and isn't funding available to demolish the hall. This has gone back and forth quite often, with estimated costs being between 80 to 130k, and being told that it's part of the plan and it's not at different times. There's also an expense for the plaques and to be going somewhere, obviously as a memorial, but again we'd like to point out the entire hall is actually a memorial. We believe that the investment of 540 to 600k with the funding that we've looked at that could be available is completely financially viable. I can in Q&A go into the community need that might be available, because I know that that was in my pre-reading in my submission, and I'm really happy to talk to that and why from a mental health point of view we believe it's vital to be looking after our community. The other thing to talk to is the hole in the roof. So there was a hole in the roof, and we have that was prior to the earthquake, and it's never been repaired, and it's left to it's obviously resulted in water damage. We have had a meeting with Karen McConaughey and Mike Sheffield in April, which established that the cost had never been investigated, and that would be investigated and we would look at funding. We still haven't heard back about that, and we're not certain if it's occurred, so today our number one request is for funding so that we can stop the additional damage to the hall. There is a trust held by the council in the long-term plan that's also been another gift from the community that Mr Crawford left. This is for capital improvements to the hall of $11,000. Although I appreciate it's not a lot of money, I'm sure Mr Crawford would be devastated to know the money he donated in good faith was not used in any way to support the hall. I would like at this point in time to thank the community board and for the heritage community who's been very, very supportive of our applications so far. The heritage team is very, very passionate, I know, with the help of Jimmy, thank you very much, and believe that this hall would fit in lines with what is needed by the community. Ultimately, we're asking for the immediate repair of the roof and the long-term maintenance plan of the hall to be included in the plan. We believe the Yolhurst community has been told many different versions of information and has really had to fight to get some focus here in its community. All we're asking for at the moment is not to be completely missed off the council radar and to have a revisitation of the hall. Thank you.
Can I just ask a quick question? You know, the basis for the council owning it, would there be anything to stop us providing it to the community? I mean, so providing it to the... Is there anything that would stand in the way legally of transferring the ownership to the community in some way, shape or form?
Yeah, I would say I'm not an expert, but from talks that would be a consideration.
Yeah.
I guess the thing we'd need to look at is we would want some kind of backup plan to make sure that, you know, this needs to be ongoing from just my generation. So I'm really passionate, but we need to make sure that someone looks after that going forward.
I agree, and that may not be a solution. I just wanted to know whether...
No, and it's something, if it came to that, we would look at doing that because we believe in it that much.
Yeah. Tim and Aaron.
Yeah, thank you.
Jimmy.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi.
And kia ora, Mike. Your page one on your request for funding, and under our page 54, under background, third point starts, the council forgot its ownership of the hall. Is that because the community have been running the hall without burden prior to the earthquake, without burden to the council? Or?
No, that's the interesting thing. It was a lot of it was actually run through the council. There was expenses being done as well. So you'd need to go back and ask other people on. It seems very confusing.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Okay.
We agree.
Now, sorry. The $11,000 you mentioned, that's sitting somewhere.
So in the back page of an annual plan, Vicky, could you talk to that?
In our list of funds and finance and performance, there's one that's called the Yolhurst Community Hall Fund, and it can only be applied for that purpose.
So we could probably do just to fix the hole in the roof just with that, maybe.
I think it's not quite enough.
Well, I think it would be enough for the roof. I don't know if
Yeah.
it's the interest off that or the actual fund that would be utilised, but, you know, even if it's $100 towards it, it would be helpful.
Yeah, because the hole, water damage is horrendous.
And that was from before the earthquake, yeah.
Thank you.
Aaron?
Yeah, so just this hall sits on the boundary of two community boards. So Councillor Chen and myself visited there with the heritage team earlier this year, well, a few months ago, and because it was a big surprise to us all what was inside there, because it was set for demolition. And as you can see from these reports, it's not in the condition that was originally thought, so everything's changed. What is inside is a perfect example and snapshot of 1950s. There's nothing else like it anywhere in this city, and so when this is restored, because the restoration's now in the hundreds of thousands, not the millions, so it changes everything completely. It will be a perfect snapshot of what Christchurch looked like at that part of our history. So it'll be a great metro facility. It'll be used by people from across the city for lots of things beyond just the local community.
Advocacy rather than a question.
I was going to say, you should have done my presentation.
It kind of contradicts your community board submission on the matter too.
It was because they weren't there. Only Jimmy and I were the only two electeds that were there. Even Mike was left off the list, and Mike, I think, got his first pash there. So. Sorry, it was someone's wedding. It was something, Mike.
Sorry, that's an image I'm just not going to get out of my head.
I've got a minute. I would say that in the costings too, that includes contingency, it includes consent, it includes a lot of fees and additional costs as well. So hopefully we'd cut that down.
Yeah, Jimmy.
Michelle, just one question Mayor asked already, particularly regarding to the partnership, whether the Yoho Rural, the Resident Association, take a lead working together with council as a partnership, to kind of to fix, repair this community hall, and in the future, running this community hall is possible or not?
Yeah, so we would be really open to helping run it. We've got members of the community that want to do that, as well as working together. I guess the thing is it's not our area of expertise in project managing a hall rebuild, and we'd like to think that with the rates we pay and things like that, we would love the council to continue their ownership that's been gifted and the responsibility. But if that's not a possibility, then we would look at other options.
Yeah. Why I ask this question, citywide still quite a few community hall, there's a partnership. Also, council encourage this partnership.
Yeah, absolutely.
And encourage the community can take the proactive the way.
And that would be our expectation too, is that if we're asking for funding, then we need to we need to stump up on the other side too, and absolutely, yeah, completely agree.
Thank you very much for your submission
Thank you.
for all of the work that you've done. And I mean, you're obviously passionate about it, so much appreciated.
No worries. Thank you.
But we're due to have our break now, and so if people want to grab a cup of tea or coffee, and we'll be back here at 1:25 for Peter Tuffley. Peter Tuffley for the Beckenham Neighbourhood Association. Peter Tuffley. Sorry, you're on.
Oh, thank you. Go, Peter. Is this on?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay. Well, good afternoon, Madam Mayor and councillors.
Afternoon.
We're very grateful for this opportunity to address the council to follow up our original submission on this year's draft annual plan. The matters we principally wish to emphasise and elaborate on fall under three headings. One is finance, the second is water, and the third is the council's relationships with ECAN, especially as regards water-related and other issues. On the subject of finance, we're pleased to see the council fulfilling its LTP commitment to diminishing rate increases. However, although the lower average year-on-year increase is welcome, we have some concerns about the way in which percentage increases have been distributed across the spectrum of residential property values. We're particularly concerned about the potential impact on two distinct categories of household. One, which we mentioned in our original submission, is householders at the lower end of the property value spectrum who, not all, but who will be paying the highest percentage increase, and for some of whom, not all, but maybe a considerable proportion, are people for whom even a small increase in absolute terms may pose a difficult challenge. The other category which we thought about was residents at the higher value property end of the spectrum, but who fit the description asset rich but cash poor, particularly elderly people living in large homes that were once family homes, and the families have left the nest and there they still are. We realise that any attempt to mitigate the impact on these two categories of ratepayer while preserving the lower average increase may be mathematically challenging, but we do feel that an effort should be made to achieve a more just distribution of the rate increase burden, and one which avoids adverse impacts on especially the less affluent members of the population. Apart from those concerns, we're happy. Other thing we're not too happy about is the way greater percentage increases fall on those of presumably lower income, as contrary to what has been a long-standing tradition of progressive taxation in New Zealand. Other than that, we're fully supportive of the notion that the council should be creative in seeking new sources of revenue. And we have suggested in our original submission the Lime Scooter Company as one potential source of revenue. They should pay for the licence to introduce a nuisance to the pavements. And revenue producing exploitation of recyclable materials as another possible source, and we gave one example of that. Turning to water-related matters, we found much to applaud in this area of the council's work. We applaud the high level of priority in the LTP in the allocation of resources to wastewater as well as to water supply, and in particular, Madam Mayor, your setting of safe and sustainable water supply at the top of the LTP list of strategic directions. We applaud too the proposed additional spending on wastewater and flow monitoring. We also applaud the studies undertaken in recent years into the ecological effects of emergency overflows. However, looking towards a time when the council will be required to seek renewal of emergency overflow consent, even though it's years in the future at present, we give notice that we will resolutely oppose any advocacy by council staff of a shift from incidence-based to effects-based consent conditions, because it's frequency of overflow incidents that residents, including many of our residents, are understandably most directly and immediately aware of and concerned about. On the subject of chlorination, we look forward to its elimination and would like to reiterate our support for the council's seeking an exemption if the government accepts the Havelock North Inquiry recommendation for permanent chlorination. That's something we do not want ever to see. Water, especially water quality and quantity, is a topic that looms large in the council's relations with the still undemocratic ECAN. Harmony and cooperation between the City Council and ECAN are vital for the well-being of the city and its residents, but that is by definition a two-way street. We've been dismayed at the lack of respect reportedly shown by ECAN officials with regard to the City Council's reiterated concerns on the Cloud Ocean bottling issue, and we will fully support any efforts by the Council to procure a judicial review of the consent given by ECAN. We believe the Council will be failing in its duty were it not to take a firm stand on this issue. Until we have a fully democratic ECAN with all its members accountable to electors, and with Christchurch having its due proportion of representation at the table, we do not feel confident that ECAN will act in good faith in its dealings with the City Council. We hope and expect that once ECAN has been democratically purged of appointees, elected city councillors and elected ECAN representatives of Christchurch constituencies will be able to work more constructively for the benefit of the city, and that the two authorities will work collaboratively at both official and member level. We submit that one area in which such collaboration is called for is public transport. We know, for example, of two instances in which residents of local communities, including our own, have been adversely affected by the deletion of bus services, with elderly residents being especially affected, and that ECAN has rejected requests that those services be reinstated. More generally, as long as ECAN remains in charge of public transport, it makes sense in principle for the City Council and ECAN to cooperate in improving public transport services. I'll close with referring to two relatively minor matters. One is our local, as yet unfulfilled, Mid-Heathcote Linear Park Master Plan and its implementation. We remain concerned that the LTP projected no continuation of funding beyond 2021, and we would like an explanation as we requested last year. Lastly, we would urge the Council to reopen the consultation on Council working relations with residents groups that was that was broken off in 2007. Given all that has happened in the city over the past dozen years or so, as well as the spirit of dialogue enunciated by yourself, Madam Mayor, we think a review of this policy is surely overdue. In conclusion, subject to the matters I've touched on, we're very broadly supportive of this year's draft annual plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Rev.
Yeah, thanks, Peter, for that. Quick question on the rates, especially for people who are asset-rich, cash-poor. Are you aware the council has had a policy for a couple of years where you can offset your rates against the equity value of your house?
Yes, we don't know what the uptake of that is.
It's very minimal because people just don't seem to know about it. But people are complaining about it, but there's an option there for them to actually deal with the cash flow issue.
Good. in that case, it should be much more widely publicised to get a bigger uptake.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you for your submission, and thank you for all your comments on water as well. Very helpful. I wonder if there's one other that you'd like to be involved in, particularly when it comes to making submissions on it, and that's the increase that the WIMAC ZIPA through ECAN is allowing into our drinking water.
Excuse me, I didn't hear that very well.
The increase in nitrate level that's being allowed to leach into our drinking water under the WIMAC, that will come up very soon, and apart from the council making submissions, we would like lots of residents associations and residents to make submissions.
You've got it. That is something we have been concerned about. It's been reported year after year during the undemocratic ECAN regime, and they don't seem to have paid it the least bit of attention.
Well, actually, they're proposing to raise the nitrate level.
Yeah.
Okay, well look, thank you very much for your submission, Peter. It's always good to hear from you. Thank you very, very much. And we'll move on now to the St Albans Residents Association. Right? Right. We weren't sure if you were here or not. So. Yeah. Good afternoon. Welcome. Oh no. Are you exhausted?
Yep, we made it.
You're exhausted.
Well, as I hope you all know, we've been putting a lot of effort into the DEMP project at the moment, and it's taken a lot of our resources,
right,
which leaves us very tired in other areas. But good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon, giving up your beautiful Saturday afternoon. You might not know it, but it is gorgeous out there. No, maybe need some skylights. So my first submission for the annual plan is some skylights for the council chambers. So as you know, St Albans Residents Association, I have with me Mark Wilson, who is also a resident of St Albans, and he's here in support of we're here together to give the submission. So, and he's also been involved a lot behind the alternative plan for the DEMP. So, as most of you know, SARA, the St Albans Residents Association, has been around for a long time, and we've put input a lot of submissions into the annual plan over the years, and it's been great to see that over those years the community's views have been included in the annual plan, and that community has made a difference in the planning of the future Christchurch. So thanks very much for that. We have two areas of concern today that we'd like to discuss that comes through the annual plan. The first area, which is still a major concern to us, is the CCC's consultation process. For example, I'd like to put the example on the table of the Northern Arterial. SARA has been consulted on this for about 20 years, and for 20 years we've said the same thing. Public transport, please, public transport, and so far our community views have not been taken into account, and we today end up with a plan, the DEMP plan, which is still focusing on cars and not public transport and not community. So it's very unfortunate that the consultation process somehow hasn't improved, that our views of 20 years ago are not coming through in the plans that are being put on the table today. So something's wrong with the consultation process, and we'd like to see more effort in making sure that the community views come forth in the planning. So the current downstream effects management plan shows that the concerns haven't been listened to. And that the plan is actually dealing with the negative effects of planning, and we don't think this is appropriate, that we should actually be having to plan around negative effects. We should be living in a world where we are planning positivity. And we definitely feel that with that plan, we are, sorry, I've just lost my way, that we've not been listened to, and that we're having to deal with the negative impacts being managed. This is not good enough. The project is definitely being done to the community rather than with, and certainly not for the community. So in the consultation, we want the for community to come first. The other issue is transportation plans as a whole for the whole of Christchurch. We'd like to see the City Council make sure that the funding that you put forward into any transport plan, and of course, we focus on the depth, but there are others, and so that the funding goes towards moving people, not cars, and focusing on the effects on the people. We don't think that any money should be, any council funding in today's world should be going towards managing car mitigation. It should be on helping us change our ways. Everything that we're looking at in today, I read something yesterday as well, for the world is in a drastic situation. Countries all over the world, England, Wales, Scotland have declared emergencies. Do believe that New Zealand will be on its way of doing the same, very similar at the very same time. And as residents, as people, we're being told that there are 3 things that we can do to make a real change. Firstly, cut down our meat eating. Secondly, to stop travelling in planes. And the third one is stop our dependency on cars. It's going to be hard for us all to do that. It's going to be very difficult for us all, and it's going to be very confronting for us all to do that. But under no circumstances will we be able to do it if we don't have our authorities helping us. If we do not have our authorities putting public transport and active modes of transportation first. So that's what we're asking you to do first in all planning. Please help us as residents do what we need to do to make the world better for those wee ones sitting in the back row up there.
To reduce our carbon footprint.
We need to reduce it. We all individually need to do it, but we can't do it if you're not providing us with the infrastructure to do it. And that needs to happen now, not in 10 years' time. It needs to happen now. And so you have the opportunity through some plans that are on the table right now that are in the annual plan for funding to stop them. So we sit here today and we ask you please to stop them. And I don't know what else I've written, but that's it. Mark?
Yeah, I just reiterate everything Emma said. So Sarah and the residents of St Albans, as well as Axel Wilkie, you might be aware of, you might not. We've been pretty proactive in actually getting the message out to other organisations, and I actually just also heard from this community here about urban authorities combining and actually pooling resources, working together for a better outcome, and that's what we've been pushing. But it all comes down to the Christchurch City Council, really, to be fair. You're the leaders with all these entities. You're the leaders, essentially, and so we're here as a community. I'm here as an individual as well, and a father, and a citizen of Earth, to say, come on, let's get serious here and actually do something about it. Yeah. Questions?
Questions? Yanni.
Thank you for your submission. Are you aware of the Future Urban Development Settlement Program? And I was just interested if you participated in that process.
A wee bit, a little bit. We have been speaking to many groups, including the people who are involved in that future public transport group. It's still, from our view and what we're seeing as residents, people are still talking in the future, that all this planning is going on for the future, and it's very frustrating because the future's now. So, yes, we're involved in it.
I think you talked about, greater transparency around decision making, greater input into community views being presented, and that it was up to council. I just really wanted to get your understanding of the regional forces at play, particularly with things like the motorways going to the south and to the north, where there's kind of a regional group above us that's really in charge of all of these decisions.
Yep, so we've actually been quite proactive in trying to engage with the NZTA, if you're sort of meaning that entity, and so we're still waiting back for them to come back to us. Right. We've obviously had really good conversations with ECAN, contrary to some people's feelings about ECAN. They're actually been quite good with regards to what we've been presenting, but it comes through as there's just a disjunct. There's a sort of no real communication that's really, taking place. So I mean, when we went and actually met with ECAN, the first thing was it's not our problem, it's council's problem.
Yeah.
It was the first thing they said.
It's the urban development strategy, which the Mayor's got a great slide that shows you what people wanted versus what we've got, which has basically been motorways.
Yeah. And that's what we don't want. Yep.
Mike?
Sorry, just quickly, so obviously you've had some discussions with ECAN.
Yes.
And they're the ones that obviously look after the bus routes. Did you talk to them about actually putting express bus routes down there, and what was the answer to that?
The answer was yes, great idea.
It's pushing it.
So they said they're considering it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. We also spoke with the Waimakariri District Council on Friday. A little bit slow, perhaps, on the uptake of the idea of carbon dioxide poisoning and cars, but they are moving forward in their thinking. So at the moment, they said they were very open to having HOV lane, and we tried to say to them that's still cars and still not good enough. So we'll be back to them next week at their annual plan submissions as well, to get in front of them again and push the rapid express lane on the Northern Arterial. It is. Yeah, and this is what we're getting. Everything's pending at the moment on it, but we have this problem right here, right now, today, and the consequences are diabolical.
Yep. Look, thank you very much for your time, and I know that you're putting tons of effort into a whole lot of stuff, so thank you very much
It's
for
a pleasure.
what you do.
It's a pleasure. Thank you guys very much. Best council I've seen ever.
Just actually,
we'll take another few minutes.
So
we want to see more improvements.
We'll be here on Wednesday submitting to the oral submissions. So if any of councillors that are actually out of the area that are interested in having a look at the presentation, come along.
Yeah, I would do, but
Wednesday.
I'm not here on Wednesday. I'm sorry.
Catch you later on.
Yeah, and another thing is, if anyone hasn't seen the presentation yet or would like to see it, please contact us. We're willing to come and meet with anybody at any time to show you the alternative plan.
This is Axel's one?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you.
Could we have the Greater Hornby Residents Association, please? We have Mark Duff and Ross.
Hello.
Someone else?
Do we want to click on this? One of these errors. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and councillors. I'm just going to put it on one.
No, got the wrong error.
This.
Press the arrow, should be right.
We can just move on to the next slide. We have been in operation just for 1 year. It's our birthday. I noticed the Redcliffe Residents Association was up to 97 years, so we've got a long way to go. But I don't think we'll be around for 97 years. I've heard the word thanking you the opportunity to speak, so I'm not going to say that. I'd like to thank you for the freedom to express our views and opinions today, and I think that's very timely of where we sit at the moment. I'd like to introduce Mark Peters to my right, who's our Deputy Chairperson, and Rolf Holstein, who's our Treasurer. I will make an apology for Lynn Huckabridge, who's overseas. She's our Secretary. We have some amazing women on our Residents Association, and they definitely do keep us in line. Next slide. We, as a residents group, would really like to thank Dr. Carleen Edwards. This is the last opportunity we most probably get to say thank you, but thank you for your work. It's been really appreciated. You come in at a difficult time to the council, and I really appreciate how difficult your job has been, and thank you for what you've done for the last 5 years, and we'd like to give you a small token of our appreciation.
Hey, stay there, stay there, stay there. Hey, wait, come back. Oh, I can't unlock my phone. Oh gosh, I'm a terrible photographer. Right, okay, wonderful. Thank you. You've probably taken about 10 photos in that time.
And on that token, while Councillor Phil Clearwater and Councillor Ralph Menji are not in our area, thank you for your service to the Christchurch City Council as well. It has been noted. And we've gone through quite a turbulent time in Hornby with the Denton Park submission, but I think it's made us stronger as a community and made us realise that we do have a voice. And Raj was very influential on that hearings panel, along with Sarah Templeton. And also with getting us through that. And we'd also like to thank our governance team staff who've been so supportive of us. We think we've got the best governance support staff in Christchurch, and really helped us getting our Residents Association up and running. And also our community elected members, Jimmy Chen, Natalie Bryden and Mike, who's here today, just given us amazing support. And also Councillors Anne Galloway and Vicky Buck, just supporting us along the way. The Hornby Library and Council Facilities, Southwest Leisure Centre, all we want to say is, look, thank you for keeping the funding in there, and we just want to get the thing built now. Seems to be the common theme. I did hear a community board come in and put a submission, do we really need more pools when we're getting the Metro Stadium? I say to that member, take that pool out of your area, would you give it back? And I don't think they would. Next one. This has more come out of the Salvation Army report that was done into Hornby. And what I like about this council is that I think you've got the mix right. We need to fix the roads, but it's no use fixing the roads if they go nowhere and we don't have any facilities. And I think it's really important to keep the youth in the city that we have the facilities as well. So I commend you on the way that you're committed to fixing the roading, trying to get more into roading, but you also realise that we do need facilities as well. Now this is what actually did come out of the Salvation Army report. Hornby needs help as well as the other side of town. And there's a lot of comments made about the traffic. Even on Friday, travelling down Amy's Road, there's 42 cars waiting to get through Hornby turning right, and no arrow working. And that's just a tip, and that's without the school traffic not even starting. So I think we'll be talking to our community board, but we'd like a strategic review done of Hornby traffic and what can be done. Overall, that's where I think it's at the stage it's at. We have become a refugee sort of suburb where a lot of people have moved into our suburb, and it's putting pressure on a lot of our infrastructure. Cycleways is a big yes in our community, in our residents group. We don't have no dissenting voices. Our only concern is though, we think the route that they have chosen is more to fix gutters and paths rather than what is best for the community. So we think there is a better way to get through Hornby with the cycleway, but in terms of cycleways, we're very supportive of them. This is the only request we have, because of the pressure on our community, is that our Hornby Service Centre, the council facility, be open up to 40 hours. I think at the moment it's on 30. There's people travelling out of our area because of the hours that the facility is not open. So we'd like to increase, if we can, that facility is open 40 hours for the public of Hornby to be able to access council staff. I noticed the Waipuna Community Board put a submission up on the Stockburn Service Centre. I will say these photos were taken a few months ago and it has even got worse. And while it's not in the Hornby area, it's a reminder that we see when we travel down Riccarton Road. It's also something that the tourists see. The council talks about the top 10 and trying to get rid of, ugly buildings inside the city. This is what we have to put up with in our community, and it's a council facility. And I think the other thing too is if you're travelling back out of town to Hornby, the traffic quite often backlogs outside this building. So people are seeing it all the time, and I just don't think it's a good look for the city. And please, anything you can do to help us would be appreciated. I'm now going to hand over to Ross, who's just got a couple of extra comments.
Yeah, good afternoon. I have some concerns about the plan. Firstly, on page 59 and 68, IDs numbers 47030 and 47031 are listed as being under contract. This is actually the cycleways, the Southwest Cycleway. These are currently under consultation with submissions closed. I've been assured this is due to an administration error and must accept that for now. However, I find it rather odd that this error has been made twice and was missed twice during proofreading. An alternative cycleway has been put forward to council, and I've been told it will be looked into after submissions have been read. Can we truly believe this? This cycleway is the same distance as the one proposed by council, but would service Templeton, Islington, Hi, Hornby, Wigram, Hallswell, as well as Prebleton, while still connecting with the city. The current route is merely a track to town, which bypasses a lot of our businesses, including Toon bike shops in Hornby. The alternative route would connect with the Southern Motorway Cycleway and would also provide access to the new cinema complex planned for Wigram. By following the alternative route proposed along the old Prebleton rail corridor out onto Branston Street and down the Paper Road, which is already in use around the Hallswell Springs Road Reserve, it can join up with the already popular cycleway running alongside the motorway. This could generate a savings of $15 to $20 million, while better serving our area and fully achieving a functional cycleway, which is more likely to be used. This plan does not interfere with any residential properties at all, or the businesses in Elizabeth Street or elsewhere. Roading in the bush or in an urban area has the same aim, and that is to reach the population, be it trees or people, with the least impact possible. This plan has minimal impact. And that's basically what I've put forward. I've actually got a copy of the thing. I've only got one because I can't print it out, so I haven't got an A3 printer. But Anne Campbell and Brendan have actually got this. It passes absolutely no residential properties at all. So rating values will not fall, nothing.
Thanks, Mark.
Very good. And I'd just like to speak to really reiterate the thought around traffic in Hornby. Traffic in Hornby was the major reason that Denton Park was quashed, and I think it's long overdue that traffic in Hornby is, as a whole, reviewed to see what it is and how we can improve it, because the heart of our suburb is so congested, it is almost unworkable. And I would really like to, petition the council in some way to please take a look at our suburb and see how you can help us out. We've accepted a lot of refugee families and traffic from the earthquakes, and we are in desperate need of some attention out there. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Jimmy Chen.
Two questions. Quickly, two questions, Mark, middle Mark. So happy birthday.
Thank you, Jimmy.
So local council, very happy working together with you. Just two questions. First one regarding to the increase the Hornby the service center to 40 hours. Actually, Hornby no service center. At the moment, it's only the temporary service, the desk in the Hornby library. Just want to remind you, after the 2011 earthquake, even up to now, we have no the service center. So we look forward to the new service center combined with the new library and the leisure center, etc. Second is, at the moment you particularly raise the traffic issue, I just want to know what's your actually the recommendation, suggestion regarding to because we are all aware, Hornby, we did have the Horseway Junction extension, there's the new facility, and new the southern, the kind of the express, the cycle route, they probably is active, the transport more, but do you have any recommendation how to improve or mitigate those traffic congestion? Yes. Have any
Thank you for the comment on the Southern Motorway. There's a lot of scepticism in Hornby that will actually take away the traffic that they are talking about, because those comments were made some time ago. Hornby's grown a lot. We've got 3 new subdivisions going in very shortly, and we really question whether it will take a lot of traffic out of Hornby. A lot of the traffic currently coming into Hornby comes into Hornby because it needs to come to Hornby, all those business areas are surrounding it. A lot of the traffic that goes into town actually cuts through around Prebbleton and comes up onto the motorway that way. I think right turning lanes at a lot of our intersections would help a lot. Yeah.
Okay, now Brett.
But just a quick question on the transport. I mean, you're totally right about the traffic. It's, just having sat on that hearings panel, it's just incredible round there. And it's hard to see that it's not going to get busier. It's such an important hub for the west of the city. I'm just sort of looking at my Google Earth here. I mean, if we ever do get rail working, it's got to come through the rail track we've got at the moment, which is right through Hornby. Yep. In terms of, I mean, the only place I could see for a possible train station is actually Carl Park, to the west side of it. Okay. Has there been any work done on that, or any thought given to actually where would you put a rail station in Hornby?
Yeah. I'm not actually that old, but Ross is more the historian. Yes, yeah.
So. Probably going to tell me they had one in 19...
Yes. The answer is yes.
Okay.
I think Jimmy may even have a photo of a drawing I made up. My idea ultimately would be to encapsulate the high area of the former rubbish dump in asphalt. That would then become a parking area for commuter rail. It would provide for the schools in the area, it would provide for the BMX, possible skateboard park in the future, or whatever other activities, and also an overflow from the mall. It then future-proofs that piece of dump from leaching into the ground.
Yes.
So by doing it that way, it does encapsulate it, and yes, put the railway station on that side. There's no parking at Denton Park. Even if they did put it behind the Oval, there's no parking. So it doesn't make sense. It would have to go on Kyle.
There is actually plans out of the odd part of Kyle and Denton that actually show a proposed railway station there. Yeah. I can't think of anything more exciting as a kid than catching a train to go near.
Yeah, cool. Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Tim, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Like Ref and the others on the panel, I was really surprised by the traffic report when we got it, because when you go there and you look at it, and I know the comment was about the Southern Motorway, but you're looking at SaveMart. And when I went and I spent some time out there, believe it or not, just wandering around looking at the traffic, and it's the type of thing that New Brighton should be, because it's irrelevant to the Southern Motorway because people are going to Hornby for things like that, and it's quite amazing. I was quite shocked, and I think that we do have to have some future planning, because if we are, as Ref said, going to get rail right, it is really going to affect those traffic flows as well. Absolutely. Cheers.
Sorry, I don't usually make a comment. But
I'm letting Carleen do this because it's you
asked
you were so generous, but you also asked for something which you are now going to be advised about.
Yes, so Councillor Chen has constantly been pressuring us about the hours in the service centre, and we've just let him know that that's required some fit out to accommodate the extra hours and the extra staff, and we just need to recruit extra staff. But pleased to say that they'll change from 9 till 5, Monday to Friday, from the 1st of July. Oh, brilliant. Councillor Chen would like it earlier.
Your flowers are coming, Jimmy.
Well, thank you very much for your submission,
Thank you.
and thank you for your generous comments at the beginning and acknowledging councillors and the Chief Executive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could we have the Hallswell Residents Association, David Hawke? Welcome.
Okay. Oh, well, thanks for listening to us today. So on my left is John Bennett, who's the chair of Hallswell Residents Association, and I'm the secretary. So my name's David Hawke. So this year for Hallswell Residents Association is a special one for us. It's our 25th anniversary. So from before our association's inception in 1994, Hallswell's obviously been growing enormously, and I think as an association, something that we've tried to do right through is advocate positively for a social and physical environment that will stand our area in good stead in the years to come. There are 3 points that we want to emphasise today from our written submission. So we're going to reiterate some of the good work that City Council has been doing in Hallswell. We want to bring to you from our written submission some recommendation for transport-related improvements to the draft annual plan. But most of the time today that we've got allocated, we want to spend on the, talking about the money to restart development of a Christchurch local alcohol plan. So first up, we've had our 2 council-built skate parks have finally been opened for use this year. They're very well used, and they are, we think, a testament to the commitment of your staff and of the community board walking alongside the local community right through the 10 years or so that it took us to get to this point. Secondly, the Quarryman's Trail major cycle route project is well on the way to completion, and we're looking forward to that completion in July enormously. I guess that leads nicely into some of the points that we want to emphasise on other transport-related components of our submission. In the draft annual plan, there's a bringing forward of the Norwest Arc major cycle route, and we strongly support that. As I guess, as an observation, construction gets underway. It'd be good to get some more emphasis from City Council on the size of central government's contribution into these major cycle routes. There's still a perception out there that it's all ratepayer money, and as the construction gets underway, a bit of emphasis there we think would be a bit of a hearts and minds job. Something that we've long advocated for is a safety focus on our streets and roads as a key way of encouraging active transport and the community cohesiveness that results from people walking and biking. Part of this has been an advocacy for lower speed limits, and that advocacy from us has stretched back many years. But we're actually getting some pushback now from some residents on the changes that have been made, and their concern is primarily over enforcement. So people don't mind so much the lower speed limits themselves, but they see the whole exercise as pointless if they are not actually enforced. It's worth pointing out at this point, we have also been talking with our MPs about the traffic policing side of things, but there is a council involvement as well. It's interesting that it's not just the speed limits that people want to see enforced, it's all road rules. And we're not psychologists, obviously, but we think that people are much happy to accept limits on their behaviour if they see the rule-breaking other drivers, obviously not them, are held to account, and people hate seeing others getting away with bad behaviour. So something that's come through from people in our community is a comprehensive red light camera program across the city, so not just talking Hallswell here, across the city. And we actually highlighted that a few years ago when we came to the ITE committee about endorsing Vision Zero, which you've heard a bit from central government recently. Similarly, a program of speed trailers as an educational tool. And there are a few, but we need a lot more. Finally, in the transport section, we want you to change the categorisation of the Curlet's Rights Link and Passenger Transport Improvements Corridor We explain in our written submission we strongly support the money set aside for this project. We accept that bus priority from Hallsville isn't going to happen overnight, but as a council we think you really do need to get on with it. Finally, the local alcohol policy. We thought we'd start off here by outlining the effects on us of not having a local alcohol policy. We've been heavily involved in objecting to an application for a bottle store in a quiet residential neighbourhood, then preparing our appeal. As an organisation, we put our energies into projects we think we can succeed at. Anzac memorialisation, skate parks, speed limits, cycleways, public transport improvements, extension to Hallsville Domain, etc. Something we encountered early on is that there's no guidance other than the Sale and Supply of Liquor Act as to whether a bottle store application might succeed. With a local alcohol policy to guide us, we would have been able to come to a considered decision as to how much, if any, energy we should put into the process. It's really important to point out that the process of preparing and presenting our application to this single licence application and filing an appeal has essentially sidelined our association since August last year, and the process is still ongoing. In our written submission, we go through some of the obvious things that we've not been able to do because of the bottle store issue. So one of the things that we thought we'd highlight is that effective a no local alcohol policy on Christchurch as a just city, embodying democracy, diversity and equity. Hallsville's not the only suburb in town, obviously, to have potential bottle store owners lining up for licences. We've got residents with the expertise and time to put into the objection process. We're aware that not all parts of town have these resources. So that's an equality of access issue for those folk, a question of social justice, we think. You did spend quite a lot of time developing the Christchurch Alcohol Action Plan, but District Licensing Committee has pointed out on their decision that that actually has no legal standing whatsoever. So that process of developing that plan has actually got us nowhere. Finally, if that doesn't convince you, Dunedin has a local alcohol plan. It's working. Christchurch should have one too. You pulled the plug a few years ago and it's time you put it back in. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tim, Yanni.
Well, as I had before, I just want to thank you guys for being so sensitive to the Addington community with regards to the rebuilding of Lincoln Road for public transport. Many communities on the outskirts don't look at the effects on the internal communities, the older communities. You guys have, so I just want to thank you very much for that understanding and cooperation. Cheers.
Yeah, I would say that when we put in our submission on that corridor that just came up, we were really, really strong that it had to be engineered as bus priority, not as an excuse for putting more cars in and four laning. Yeah.
Yanni?
Yeah, thank you for your submission. I was really taken with the fact that you talked about the impact of the alcohol licence application and the time taken with it and the appeal, that it meant that you weren't engaged with draft our space plan.
Yeah,
that plan's only had less than 100 submissions.
Yep.
The previous UDS had over 3,500.
Yep.
We're going to be asked as a council to agree to that at some stage in the near future. Do you think that we should be asking for greater engagement on that plan, given its significance to communities who may not have had a chance to participate?
Yeah, I think so. I think it slipped under the radar with a lot of communities, and more engagement would be great. So, as we explain in our submission, we just didn't have time to do it. Normally we would do that. I put in a personal submission, but it was a personal submission that was done on the night that the submissions were due. Yeah. And, you know, it takes a lot of time for an organisation to get some feedback, but it is such an important plan that, I think it needs more people to come and input, and asking for more input would be great. We hopefully would be able to participate in that.
Yeah, okay. No, that's...
Phil.
Thank you, David, very much for your very constructive submission. Just around the LAP policy, which we have let go, you'll be aware, David, that it became, in effect, extremely difficult to have a LAP to actually make it effective too, until central government changes the Sale of Liquor Act. And so we, as a council, can ask them to do that, so that in fact we'll make it easier for residents groups and associations like yours to actually oppose some of the licensing outlets. So would your resident association also support council if we make a strong submission to government, central government, to make changes in that law?
Yeah, so we have already been talking to our local MPs on that topic. I guess I would say though, with all due respect, Dunedin has gone through the process and it took them an awful lot of work to do that, but at the end of the day, they got a local alcohol policy which is in place and functioning. And while, you know, having a strategic view in terms of changing the actual Act itself, the reality of alcohol legislation is that it's a bit of a long haul because of the conscience vote that happens in Parliament. And I guess what we would see is, sure, we do need to go and council too, need to work together with MPs to try and drive changes with the legislation, but the legislation that exists at the moment makes provision for local alcohol policy, and so, you know, you can get on with it. And I guess the other thing is that if you look at the relationship between central government and local government is often very unhappy when central government tells it what to do. And we've got a case here where the legislation actually allowed local government, local communities to have a role in putting in places that were sensitive to their own communities. And as we say, Christchurch hasn't done that, Dunedin has, and a few other places have as well.
Thanks, David. That's very helpful.
I could contribute to that debate, and maybe we should have a debate about it at some stage, but we've taken up the time of the submission. So thank you very much for your submission. I would like to catch up with you on that matter, because the legislation the central government didn't do what it had to do to really back up what the local alcohol plan could do. So anyway, I won't hold you up now, but we will have a catch up on it.
Okay, that sounds good.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Annabelle Weir.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Good afternoon, councillors. I'm Annabelle, this is Campbell, and this is Josh. We're here on support of our submission for the Diamond Harbour Library that needs more hours and more days. In my submission, I proposed a set of hours. The results from the paper petition showed that overwhelmingly respondents wanted late nights and more weekend time. Therefore, an online survey was created. I've created a pie chart. You've also probably got the raw data, but I have got this chart of the main points from that survey. The important thing to note that over 70% of the respondents voted for increased hours, late nights and longer weekends. Only 2% wanted to keep the hours we currently have. The hours voted top choice are Monday to Friday, 10 till 6, Tuesdays late night with a 10 till 8, and Saturdays 10 till 4. Our library is open for a mere 13 hours a week. All other libraries in the Christchurch City Council's portfolio receive around a minimum of 30 hours. Our closest library is actually Christchurch South Library. That's 25 kilometres away. Littleton comes next at 28 kilometres, both of which are on difficult, windy roads. Most other library users have at least 2 libraries within 10 kilometres of their area. We do not. Okay, the why. Current hours do not meet the needs of our communities. We have a huge commuter workforce who wish to use their local library rather than a town one. The hours are too hard to remember. It is a critical part of creating a connected community. Our library is an important element of our community. Our library residents voted overwhelmingly for more hours. We feel Christchurch City Council needs to show fairness and greater understanding of the towns beyond central Christchurch. A late night and weekend option here is only fair when Tuaranga Library offers this for Christchurch residents. My children could go every day, as required. These boys read 40 books a week. We have been to the library 3 times. Well, what was that big pile at home? Anyway, we could take the Sea Scouts there as part of the curriculum for libraries. Children can visit after school. Preschool children and caregivers could have a safe and sheltered place to go. People can catch up in a non-commercial space that would be for all ages. Community issues and matters get discussed in our library, like our library hours. Another part-time position could be created. Of course, our dream is to have a purpose-built facility on the Godley House site with a cafe, a clean exterior, clean exterior access toilets, and pay-for-use showers. Until that debate completes, we sincerely request more library hours in the interim. Please seriously consider this submission and act upon it as soon as possible. Thank you very, very much for listening to the voice of Diamond Harbour. We are very grateful to be heard. Thank you. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Kia ora, and thank you very much. It's, I really love it when someone from the community has gone out and done this extensive survey and reflected back the feelings of the community. So it's a fabulous piece of work.
Thank
Sarah.
you.
Thank you very much. I was wondering is there a part way kind of thing? If there was one of those sets of hours that was the top priority, so for example, would it be the Saturday hours or a late night or more consistent hours? If there was one bit of that,
I would probably have to do a further survey, because at the moment I did 4 sets, and overwhelmingly people chose the one that we created based on what they said in the petition. In the petition, which I have here, all their comments, they just wrote millions of comments, and I tried to collate them. And then that's why we offered them those hours, that they actually chose the top one. The next one was based on, the next one was actually Littleton hours in the green. That was actually Littleton hours. So that was the next favourite, 23%. And then the 19% one was actually based on Rolleston.
Right.
So I would probably have to go back and ask. Another petition.
Just well, not a petition necessarily, but I mean,
another survey.
If there wasn't the opportunity or the funding available to do the full what you're after.
I think after school probably. After school, but also what I understood is after school, but also the late nights. So perhaps maybe an extra, maybe the Thursday could be extended to go till 4 p.m. as well. And don't lose the Tuesday night. I know it doesn't always get a lot of foot traffic, but we use it a lot if we can get in there before tea.
Thanks.
Sorry, Anne had her hand up and we've come to the end of time. Sorry. Anne,
Just a quick one, Annabelle. Thank you so much for all this work. And is there any capacity within the community for voluntary,
I think what I understand, it's been run by volunteers for years, and they are discouraged at this stage, but I'm not sure. I'm quite new to the area. I've only been there 5 years.
Okay, so perhaps is there someone on staff that we could talk to about how to encourage that, and perhaps there might be an opportunity for that resource to be
I think
supported.
Since the earthquakes, everyone's really exhausted, and we've got enough on our plate, to be honest. We'd love a service that was paid with a paid librarian. To be honest, that I don't think asking for more volunteers is going to work in our community. The Campbell's keen.
I'm already a volunteer anyway, so
That's great. Look, but the last submitter hasn't turned up, so I'll just allow Andrew to ask the final question.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Great, thank you very much. And I'd certainly echo the support and thanks for the work that you've done in running the petition and the survey and bringing such detailed information to this meeting. Which leads to my question. There were 251 people responded to the petition, plus another 7, I think it was, at the cafe at Alton Bradley. How many people responded to this survey that we've got here?
195. But the problem with SurveyMonkey is I only get to see the first 100 responses for free. And so we don't have a community if you guys would like to fund it, we can see the other 100. But
you could just use Google Forms. You didn't.
my son tells me I should have used Google Forms. I was actually very grateful. Another volunteer did this for me because actually my husband did the pie chart. Another gentleman, Pete Simpson, actually did the survey for me because it wasn't one of my fortes. And so at this stage we have 195. It may have gone up because that was this morning.
Yep.
And it is still open survey. And I would love to know what those other 100 want. But
Yeah.
I would say it's the same as the first 100.
Well, certainly what you've provided is all good information that I'm sure will lead to some discussion around what you're requesting. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right, so that has brought us to the conclusion of our submissions today, and brought us to the conclusion of the submissions on the annual plan. So it is at this point I'd like to thank councillors for their attentive involvement and engagement with our communities, and I declare the meeting closed.